The date is December 10. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The 9th African, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States, ACP, is underway in Nairobi, Kenya, running from December 9 to 10. Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith are in attendance. More in this report. Jamaica is open for business. Those remarks from Prime Minister Andrew Holness as he made the case for investors during his opening remarks at the ACP Business Summit Presidential Dialogue on Monday. Mr. Holness sold Jamaica as a stable democracy with a stable economy. He also segued to the area of infrastructure as a great way for African investors to get their feet wet in Jamaica.
Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean, Barbados, we have very stable democracies with very stable economic policies, particular fiscal policies. So this is a good environment for investors to consider to place resources. But more than that, we are now at a phase in our development where we are emphasizing infrastructure and energy, two critical planks of any country's development. In Jamaica, for example, we have been investing heavily in infrastructure. And it's always a puzzle to me because China has taken a specific interest. The European countries have taken a specific interest, but we have not yet had an African country taking a specific interest in very profitable infrastructure investments in Jamaica. And I'm using this opportunity to invite African investors to come and participate in the development of the country.
Prime Minister Holness also stressed the need for continued partnerships between government and private sectors. However, he said that while such partnerships must be strengthened, none should lose sight of the poor.
It is absolutely important that governments recognize that the private sector is not the enemy. It is absolutely important that governments realize that profit is not a bad word. Absolutely important. And I mentioned the point that Africa has gone through phases, so too has the Caribbean. And the phase that we're now in is to try to determine what is the right role for government. Because lurking in the background of this newly discovered spirit of enthusiasm about industry and commerce and growth is still a large percentage of our population lives in absolute poverty. So in the conversation about the economy and the incorporation and the new partnership with the private sector must be within that partnership an understanding that we have to do more in dealing with poverty in our countries.
Prime Minister Holness and Foreign Affairs Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith headed the delegation which attended the conference. They also took time out to meet with the Jamaican diaspora in Kenya. The 9th African, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States is being hosted in Nairobi, Kenya, and will run from December 9 to 10. It's held under the theme, a transformed ACP committed to multilateralism. Formed in 1975, the ACP is a development cooperation platform between developing countries and the European Union. It is a group of 79 developing countries with similar challenges seeking to forge important partnerships to further South-to-South and North-to-South cooperation. Jamaica is now ranked 96th out of 189 countries and territories with a Human Development Index, HDI, of 0.726. The report was released Monday by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. Richard Kelly, Programs Specialist at the UNDP, said the new ranking represents a 13.2% increase in Jamaica's HDI value between 1990 and 2018. In addition, Jamaica's gross national income per capita jumped by 20.2% from 1990 to 2018. The ranking puts Jamaica in the high human development category and is shared with Venezuela. The government is embarking upon a drive to increase tree densities on coffee plantations from the current average of between 600 to 650 plants per acre to 800 plants per acre. That information came from Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries Minister Foreshore. Speaking at an inaugural awards banquet for the Jamaica Coffee Exporters Association at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston on Saturday, Minister Shaw said this will be done over time and is part of initiatives being undertaken to stimulate future growth of the coffee sector.
The drive to increase our stock of coffee trees has also been bolstered with the support of the Japanese government under the Grassroots for Human Security project. This project will see the production of 50,000 typical coffee seedlings. These seedlings, along with supporting inputs, will go to approximately 200 coffee farmers in the Blue Mountain region, the first batch of which has already been distributed.
He noted that this will assist in increasing production and quality of the Blue Mountain coffee.
The World Coffee Research Group has been carrying out a coffee variety testing project with a view to identifying and subsequently providing improved genetic coffee planting materials that are consistent with Jamaica's renowned coffee quality and taste profile, but more tolerant to diseases affecting all coffee. This project is in its first year of the quality assessment stage and will continue for another 3 years. At the end of the project, in another 6 years or so, the Jamaican coffee industry will benefit from improved coffee varieties that have been adapted to our agroecological conditions that are resistant to the main coffee diseases such as coffee leaf rust.
Chairman of the JCEA, Norman Grant, in his remarks noted that the coffee industry is seeing a slow and steady recovery.
Since early 2019, the export demand has slowly started to return, and we are actually seeing a slow and steady recovery of prices to farmers as the market is now reordering.
$9 million has been granted from the Global Fund for Jamaica's HIV program. Jamaica has also been removed from the list of nations to be transitioned out of the program in the next review cycle. Word of Jamaica's status came from Ivan Krushank, chairman of the country coordinating mechanism for the Global Fund, in an interview with the Jamaica Observer. The decision was made by the Global Fund during its last review cycle, which ended last year. The Global Fund, which provides support to countries in response to AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, allocates funds to eligible countries for a 3-year period based on the country's disease burden and income level. Residents and business operators on Foreshore Road in Port Royal will have to find other accommodations before the end of the month. Their properties, which are situated in a squatter settlement, were scheduled to be demolished Monday. However, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Darrell Vaz, said it will now get underway by the second week of January. He warned there would be no further extension to the demolition date. He said lands in the area are needed for the Port Royal Development Program. In addition, he noted that the area is environmentally sensitive and there are also concerns for its marine life. The U.S. Senate has confirmed a Jamaican-born university professor and former journalist Richard E. Myers to a North Carolina trial court seat in a bipartisan vote. The seat has been vacant since Judge Malcolm Howard moved to semi-retirement status at the end of 2005. Born in Jamaica, he grew up in North Carolina and worked at the Wilmington Morning Star in the early 1990s. He earned his law degree from the University of North Carolina's School of Law in Chapel Hill and has been a professor there. The US dollar is being traded at 134 Jamaican dollars 25 cents, down by 48 cents. That's according to the Bank of Jamaica's daily exchange trading summary. The Canadian dollar is being traded at Jamaican $102.03, down from $102.11, while the British pound sterling is being traded at $175.66, down from $175.96. In regional news, Barbadians now have until April 1, 2020 before the ban on single-use petrol-based plastic bags comes into effect. The previous deadline was January 1, 2020. However, Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy Minister Kirk Humphrey said this did not mean the Mayor Mottley administration was reneging on its promises. Earlier this year, government enforced a ban on all petrol-based single-use plastic containers. Persons caught with the containers face prosecution. The opposition United Workers' Party has rejected last Friday's general election results and has condemned Observer Mission's findings that the poll was free and fair. In a near 16-minute Facebook broadcast on Saturday night, UWP leader Lennox Linton said that, unfortunately, the people of Dominica had their hopes set aside, dashed by yet another stolen election. End quote.
This illegitimate result renders the election null and void, and it renders the government null and void. We will not recognize this government because it is the result of a stolen election. That's where we stand. We, in the United Workers' Party, consider that the 3 seats that we hold were properly won because they had nothing to do with bribing or bringing in any overseas votes. We submitted ourselves to the requirements of the constitutional rule of law and were elected as the representatives of our separate communities in the Parliament of Dominica. Those who stole elections in their separate constituencies will need to answer for what they have done, because what they have done is wrong. Stealing elections is not right. And the people of Dominica must rise up and stand up to make sure that those who have done wrong to Dominica, those who have moved purposefully to pervert democracy and subvert the will of the people in Dominica, must be made to pay for it.
But Observer Missions from CARICOM, the Organization of American States, the OAS, and the Commonwealth reflected the will of the people. The United States Embassy has also congratulated the people and government on the election results, and that the U.S. stands ready to work with the Roosevelt-Skerrit administration. But Linton was adamant that the DLP did not deserve any congratulations.
In our collective responsibility for the advancement of global civilization, we should not elevate skullduggery to a virtue by congratulating those who succeed with dishonesty. Similarly, we cannot recognize governments where ruling parties pervert democracy, subvert the will of the people by stealing elections. And so we don't recognize this government that has come as a result of the theft of the elections of 2019.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Roosevelt-Skerrit said that he will be addressing the thorny issue of electoral reform. This issue was a lightning rod for opposition protests in the lead-up to last Friday's polls.
Recognizing that there are differences of opinion as to how the process should go forward, it is my intention, as indicated, to invite a Caribbean jurist to chair a commission. And our intention is to also invite other partners in the hemisphere to assist us in carrying the process forward. And there'll be both private and public hearings And those who want to share their views will have an opportunity to share their views. And that coming out of these consultations overseen by this commission and chaired by these juries, we can agree on what the legislation should entail to usher in electoral reform.
CARICOM last Saturday inaugurated its diplomatic office in Nairobi, Kenya. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley noted the historic, symbolic and practical implications of the new office. CMC's Kenton Chance was on hand and filed this report.
Prime Minister Mia Mottley said that the Caribbean and Africa have been separated not just by the Atlantic Ocean, but also by centuries of division. She said CARICOM is adamant that it will not allow this separation to continue.
When we claim our Atlantic destiny, we are conscious that we are coming home. We are conscious that we are igniting the bonds that may have been sparked by our predecessors in North Atlantic capitals, but born out of common values and a common battle. But we believe that it is incumbent upon our generation to move to the next level, and that we have no one else to blame now but ourselves if we do not remove the separation that is foisted upon us for centuries.
Nairobi is home to the largest UN presence in the Global South and is one of 4 major United Nations office sites where numerous different UN agencies have a joint presence. Mottley said CARICOM wants to use its presence here as a bloc and hopefully with its members setting up their own diplomatic missions to address issues of importance to the region.
That we are in a position to shape and influence the policy framework that is going to be foisted upon most of our countries with respect to how we live, how we build, how we trade, and how we manage our environment in this very difficult time.
Mottley outlined the importance of the diplomatic office here in Nairobi in terms of CARICOM's interactions with the United Nations.
More than any other location perhaps, more than Geneva, more than New York, the CARICOM representation in Nairobi is going to be the one that will have the greatest impact on how our nations function, how we build, how we trade, how we deal with our food security, and above all else, how we deal with our water security.
Meanwhile, Monica Juma, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kenya, commended CARICOM for taking the decisive move to embrace Kenya, Africa, and the United Nations fraternity in Nairobi. She pledged her country's support to CARICOM nations and their bilateral and multilateral efforts. The CARICOM Diplomatic Office was inaugurated at a time when the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States, the ACP, is holding its summit of heads of state and governments from December 9 to 10 under the theme, A Transformed ACP Committed to Multilateralism. From Nairobi, Kenya, I'm Kenton Chance for CMC News.
In sports, Jamaica Olympic Association JOA President Christopher Samuda warns that Jamaican athletes must take responsibility in ensuring that they are not found doping in their respective sports. The warning comes after the World Anti-Doping Agency WADA issued a 4-year ban on Russia from participating in all international sporting events, including next year's Olympic Games in Tokyo. The decision came in response to findings that the country tampered with potential doping cases. The ruling by WADA's executive committee means that the flag, name and anthem of Russia will not be visible at next year's games, and they could be stripped of hosting major global sporting events. Samuda re-emphasized the association's stance on doping, calling on athletes and sporting officials to do their part to commit to making their respective sports drug-free. Although the ruling bars the country from competing, its athletes may be allowed to participate in events if they can prove that they are clean. Samuda says that while WADA's decision may be seen as harsh, they cannot be criticized for taking extreme action based on the accusations and the evidence supplied. And that's the news on PBCJ. But before you go, take a look at what fellow Jamaicans have to say about the violence and abuse taking place in our society. This week marks the end of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and an annual international campaign. It started on November 25, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and ends today, December 10, Human Rights Day.
It is scary to see that the kids, they don't even walk home anymore because of the violence that is going on with the abuse of women, the killing of the women and stuff like that.
I don't know, they must remember that there is a God, and they must look into their life and see how they live and know that they have a mother, a sister, and a brother.
I love my children and I love my woman them. And I don't want nobody beat up my daughter. And I don't want nobody beat up my son. I like it with discipline. I don't like. Then if you have discipline, I'll beat a woman.
Without a woman, we can't reach for her. We the children ourselves can't reach for her because women have a lot of power. I mean, like, come on.
First of all, I can't even understand how you feel you have the right to hurt somebody, to batter them and bruise them and mash them up. I don't understand how you feel you have that right. I mean, we're all equal in the eyes of God and in the eyes of man. So we should treat each other better. We can't treat each other like dirt, we can't treat each other like dog. We have to treat each other with the proper respect that is due to us. So we can't go on, so we have to do better. And even the littlest thing is starting to make a difference. So whatever it takes to just make that little difference, to make change your mind, just change your outlook, start treating people with respect and love and care. And because no matter how you look at it, there is no excuse for violence. There's no excuse for abuse.